can a correct call actually also be a lucky call? We're going to discuss that and a whole lot of football this time on Football Frenzy. Welcome to the Frenzy, everybody. It's the Iceman, Matt Frates. That is the coach, Brad Powell. Another week, another Football Frenzy, ready to discuss some football. We got a lot on the slate this week, but first, Coach, how you doing?
Iceman, doing well. We're getting a few weeks into football season here. Some things are starting to shake out. We're learning more and more each week about different teams around the country, which is exciting. We're finding out who the contenders are and who the pretenders are that can join us as pretenders in the world of sports content creators.
Absolutely, yes. There are plenty of those, and we are definitely one of the best pretenders out there. No doubt about that. So we got a packed slate this week, so we are going to forego all of the fun banter that we normally have, and we're going to get right into it, man. So this is week 4 of college football, and we have a new number 1, and it is the Texas Longhorns. How do you feel about that?
I think it's deserved, well-deserved. They looked really good. Obviously, Quinn Ewers went down. Arch Manning came in, and they looked just as good, if not better, by some people in some people's opinion than they looked. And they're just a good football team, man. They're well-rounded. They've got depth, and I think that Sark is he's worked out a lot of things in his past, and I think he's primed to really make a run and contend for national championships, year after year. And this is the team that I think can get him there. So plenty for the Texas faithful to be happy about. They've been dominant and, kind of look forward to seeing, they got a big matchup this week. So we'll see how things go there.
Sark is on such a great kind of story arc. If you think about it, the way that everything went, I think he was at USC, right? And he was forced to quit because of substance abuse issues. I think it was alcohol, right? All that good stuff. And then he gets resurrected under Saban. And Saban kind of went through that phase for a while where he was resurrecting a bunch of coaches who sort of had these stains on them that felt like they were unhireable. And now Sark is in this position where he had a playoff team last year. He had the ability to turn down the Alabama job. And now he's got what seems to be, after the way Arch Manning played this weekend, now just one game or partly one game. But he seems to have sort of an embarrassment of riches at quarterback. And a playoff team, at least playoff caliber team to boot. I kind of love stories like this. Like, he has risen from the ashes like a phoenix, and I just think it's awesome. And you're right, it is well-deserved. They've looked like the best team in the country, and when Quinn Ewers goes out, they bring in Arch Manning, and he looks just as polished, just as good, and that's a nice problem to have.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, the depth at the quarterback position that they have is absolutely unmatched probably around the country. I mean, I know that there's people who will make an argument for their own quarterback rooms, but you can't debate the quality and the talent just between those two guys. I don't even know who's in that room beyond the two of them. Doesn't matter. Those two guys, Arch Manning could literally go anywhere else in the country and start probably outside of a couple places perhaps. And so, I mean, right now. And so that would be impressive. And I do want to say, I mentioned that Texas had a big matchup coming this week. I don't think ULM qualifies as a big matchup.
They do not, no.
By any stretch of the imagination. But no, you're right, though. Sark has definitely kind of resurrected his career. And Saban, he's got a gift, man. And I just wonder if Brian Kelly's going to end up there as the offensive coordinator here in a year or two to go get his cleansing, even though Saban's not there. Maybe
Kalen DeBoer.
What's his face? Kalen DeBoer can work the same magic at Alabama. Or we'll see who becomes that new guy, who becomes the place, the coach and the place where you go to clean yourself up and get another crack at a good job.
So I just want to acknowledge this comment here from Chris, who's talking about Arch Manning going to the Dolphins. We're going to get to the Dolphins a lot later on in the show, so you want to stick around for all that Tua talk. But, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could be picking high enough. Arch Manning, I would think, is good enough that he was going to be a highly touted pick. I mean, he's got the blood, but it's obvious that he's got the talent too, because he certainly showcased that this weekend. But just to look at Texas's schedule for the rest of the year, they have UL Monroe this weekend, obviously. They have Mississippi State at home. Then they have Then they have Oklahoma. And that's going to be the game that kind of starts the murderer's row for Texas, when we're really going to find out how the transition to the SEC has gone because they go Oklahoma, they go Georgia, they have Vanderbilt, so a nice little, I guess, a nice little reprieve, and then they play Florida. So if they can survive, even if they only win one of those games against Oklahoma and Georgia and win out, which they should be able to do against inferior opponents, teams that, Vanderbilt might be pesky, but Florida's down, obviously, then they have a real shot at the playoff. And if they get in, they're in good shape. So their schedule does kind of align for them to be in really good position outside of the fact that they have the talent to do so.
No, I absolutely agree. And one thing I do want to mention is, have you seen the Quinn Ewers Dr. Pepper commercial?
No, I have
I don't
not.
know if he's in more than one, but the one I saw was great. He's like a police officer,
Oh,
and
yes,
there's
I
an
have.
incident, and they're like, "Do you want backup?" He's like, "No, I don't need backup. Don't need a backup, even if he does have great hair and have famous relatives or whatever," which I thought was fantastic. Dr. Pepper, man, they make good commercials, and it's cool to see them. The NIL thing, I'm sure they got that working.
I also like it when players can sort of, I don't know, make fun of themselves
Yeah.
or make fun of the situation. I don't know how Arch Manning obviously took that commercial, but Quinn Ewers is in a position where he can do that and have some fun with it because he's the guy.
Well, I mean, Arch's uncles both have proven to have pretty good,
Sure.
senses of humor and personality. So I'm sure that the apple doesn't fall far.
Let's maybe calm it down on Eli a little bit. Maybe Peyton, I think, definitely has a sense of humor. Eli, yeah, we'll get into that. Maybe I'm a little biased because Eli is up for the Hall of Fame this year and or next year, and I'm just not feeling that. But continuing
And
with
the New
college,
England Patriots single-handedly
stop
put
it.
Eli Manning in the Hall of Fame.
I hate you. So Georgia goes to Lexington, which I don't think you and I would say that's a tough place to play. However, it is an SEC opponent. And so any road game in the SEC against even a mediocre talent could be tough because they have a target on their back. I watched almost this whole game, and Georgia, man, they were lucky to get out of that game alive. They did just enough to win. And I do believe, though, that it was more so that Kentucky was ready for the moment than this is possibly going to be a problem for Georgia. But you never know. It is the SEC after all, so they're going to have to be on their toes. But when I listened to Kirby Smart after the game, the dogs are going to be ready.
It's not out of character for the best team in the country or one of the best teams in the country to kind of have a stinker during the regular season where they sneak by a lesser opponent. And that's not to throw any shade at Kentucky and Mark Stoops. He's really done a good job at making Kentucky the contender in the SEC to some degree. But I think the proof will be in the pudding as the season goes on to see, you can get away, we can kind of explain away one game like this. But if Georgia strings together a few games that look like this, and I think they've been bit by the injury bug a little bit too, if I'm not mistaken. Now, of course, I'm sure they have a ton of depth, and it's just next man up mentality. But I'm not concerned yet. There's still a long ways to go, and we'll see where they go from here. And Kirby has proven to do as good of a job as anybody of getting his team to play with a chip on their shoulder, and he probably loves the fact that they just scraped by with a win.
Well, the way he was talking, he knew exactly what he was going to say to that team when he got to the locker room after the game because he insinuated that they weren't paying attention this week, that they overlooked Kentucky, that they kind of thought they were going to waltz in there and do their business, and they almost shit the bed. So Kirby's going to have them ready. You know he is, and I agree with you. He wants Kirby Smart, I think, and I said this that maybe he could be the new Saban, but he's now, for lack of a better term, no pun intended, the top dog in the SEC in terms of coaches right now. I mean, he's a multiple national champion. Saban's not there. A lot of other coaches are up and coming in terms of having to prove themselves. So I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Kirby Smart that he's going to have the dogs ready for the rest of the season until they prove that they can. They're going to have enough stiff competition. So they can't sleep more than once. They got lucky to get by in this one, but as you've said many times, you can lose one game and probably still make the playoff. And if a team could do it, it's an SEC team for sure.
There's probably some SEC teams that could lose 3 or 4 games and still be in consideration, just
If that's
just because of the narrative that exists, and it depends on who those games are to and stuff. But that might be a little hyperbolic, but I don't think it's too far from the truth.
as long as it's not Brian Kelly, I don't care. But I do have to ask you a question now. I know we just talked about Texas and Georgia, and we probably both would agree that they're the two best teams in the country right now in terms of how they've played, maybe. But is it possible, just possible, that Alabama might be the sneaky best team in the country right now?
I think they're flying under the radar a little bit. I think, and that's okay. If I'm Kalen DeBoer, that's where I wanna be right now, especially, in your first year after taking over for Nick Saban. I think that he's cool with the spotlight being on Georgia and Texas and maybe even Tennessee to some degree, and, Ole Miss is getting some attention. If I'm him, I'm like, "Cool, you keep the spotlight there while we go to work." I haven't seen enough to be able to, like, say, "Yeah, I think that they might be the best team in the SEC." Is it possible? Absolutely. But they've done nothing. They haven't done anything to disprove it, but I haven't seen anything to, make me feel strongly that
What are you talking
they
about?
are.
They went into Camp Randall and handled their business. One of the toughest
That's
places to play in the country.
Camp Randall, Camp Anawana from Salute Your Shorts, it doesn't matter.
But they have looked pretty good. I mean, Jalen Milrow, again, I think being a seasoned quarterback is very, very helpful for a guy like DeBoer who's taking over a position that's really tough to take over for, especially with the guy that he's following up. But I think under the radar is a good way to put it because they have been winning, they've been handling their business, and for the most part have handled it well. I mean, they went into a road environment and they left no doubt, as Herman Boone would say, leave no doubt, right? So it's like they are primed to actually be good. Now, right now, I think that I saw that of the top 7 teams in the AP, 6 of them are from the SEC. That's obviously not going to last, but it just shows you the SEC, hands down, is the best conference in the country.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's where in the South is where the best high school football is played. Generally, those players. I mean, you don't have to go too far from home to play for a top-notch program. It's warm pretty much year round. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why these kids stay in the South, and that's where the best college programs are. It's not too hard to explain why that's the case, but you're right. I think it is going to kind of even itself out because they are going to cannibalize each other a little bit. But that also goes back to what I said, where I see there could be a team with 3 to 4 losses that's legit in contention for the playoff from the SEC just because of the strength of schedule.
The thing is, this show is going to be SEC heavy, and unfortunately, all of the good teams in the SEC are playing a lot of teams that are even out of conference. But here's the thing: you're right; they are going to cannibalize each other. And a good example of that was LSU and South Carolina. I'm disappointed because both of us thought the Gamecocks were ready. They're ready to take this step. And for a vast majority of the game, they were. Their quarterback got hurt. So that certainly is a little bit of leeway in terms of how we can feel about the game. But damn it, Brian Kelly gets out of with another win that he shouldn't have had. And that's what really disappoints me the most.
Yeah, South Carolina, I think as I put in the notes, if you saw, they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, man.
I
Like
know.
they gave that game away, and what a gut punch. I would almost rather just be have my tail kicked from wire to wire than to be up 17 to nothing, feel good about the direction things are going, and then piss it away. And that's got to be incredibly frustrating
Oh,
for,
yeah.
you've got some family that, are very passionate South Carolina fans. I can only imagine how they're feeling. And man, what a blow for Shane Beamer, right? I mean, there was a lot of hype around that. Like this was really his opportunity to sort of take that step up
Yes.
nationally and in the SEC,
Yes.
to maybe kind of not that he's in his father's shadow, but to sort of really create his own identity as a head football coach. And I mean, he had it there, man, within his grasp. But that's the difference between, I guess, the greats and everybody else.
Oh, it hurts because there's a couple reasons why it hurts. Obviously, we both picked them, so we were wrong in that regard. Brian Kelly wins another game, so that's another thing that's disappointing. But what's disappointing for me is Frank Beamer was an excellent football coach. No denying that. He has one of the highest win totals in all of college football history. Obviously, a legend in Blacksburg. Did a lot of winning, but his one stigma, I think, was never really winning in the games that mattered the most. And if you look at Virginia Tech's overall record against top 5 schools, I think they only have 2 or 3 wins all time. It's like 3-20. And a vast majority of those obviously came under Frank Beamer. Now they're obviously playing more of those now as we get more distance from Frank Beamer's career. But Shane Beamer seems to have the same DNA in this was his opportunity. I mean, look, yeah, LSU is not the team that they were last year with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, but it's an opportunity to beat a seasoned head coach and get a win over a ranked opponent, no matter how it happens. And yes, their quarterback got hurt, but Shane Beamer didn't make any adjustments. It didn't seem like he was adjusting. And Brian Kelly, say what you want about the man personally, as a football coach, he has seen a lot. So he does that. And he does it well, obviously. He's done a ton of winning. That's what I saw. But I also don't know anything.
Would you say, when you look at these coaches, so the Beamers, father and son,
Yes.
and there's others around the country, I think that you will probably pop into your head as I'm talking about this, but some of these coaches that are very like, I don't want to say system driven, but we'll say that for like, but system driven, that sort of, Beamer ball, right?
Yes.
That have very strong philosophies that they are entrenched in that guide all of their decision making. That is probably, coaches that operate this way. I think they do it to take emotion out of the equation. That they are guided by their philosophy at all times, and I feel like those coaches win a lot of football games, but they seem to struggle to go off script when necessary to get that big win, to take that risk. I don't want to say they don't have any balls, but a little bit it feels like. I mean, and Marcus Freeman may turn out to be this type of coach. Truthfully, I mean, the way things have, we'll see, right? He's got the chance to not to rewrite the story a little bit here. He's still very early in his career, but very system driven. His philosophy drives a lot of his decision making, and I think the greats really become they really excel at going off script in the most important moments. And I don't want to say like going with their gut because I feel like that's weird, but they just have like a knack for making they're pushing the right buttons at the right time.
I mean, sometimes you have to look at a situation and make a different decision than you normally would. If you look at Frank Beamer in this example, one of the biggest things that we saw over the time that I was there, and then even afterward, was yeah, they did a lot of winning, but they never like they kind of had the same Marcus Freeman feel to them. They were never explosive, and they never had an offensive scheme that matched what was the rising tide of offense in the ACC. And you saw what happened as recruiting changed and everything changed in the landscape. They started falling down. Another guy that I think about, and rest in peace, Mike Leach, kind of the same way. Now, the air raid is a completely different thing, and he had a ton of success. A lot of guys threw for a lot of yards, but Mike Leach teams, notably 8-4 a lot, right? There weren't a lot of playoff caliber Mike Leach teams because as much winning as he did and as good of a football coach as he was, never could win the big game. And maybe it's to your point that he was a system guy. There's probably a ton of guys that are like that. And you have to adapt. Nick Saban won national championships at 2 schools, right? But he also coached at how many? I mean, he was
Yeah.
successful at Michigan State, LSU, Alabama. And you know why he failed in the NFL? He didn't adapt. That's
Well,
why.
he ended up having to adapt, right? I think at Alabama
Yes, he did.
as this as offensive football started to evolve very rapidly. Um, he, that's when all of a sudden you saw him really up the ante with these offensive coordinator hires, the Bill O'Briens, the Lane Kiffins, the Sarks, and so on. And so, like, because he was a very and still his stamp was still on the offense, but he brought in guys who were experts, that were offensive minded guys, and for the most part, let them run their offense. And I think that served him extremely well. In his time at Alabama. And I think that I'm hoping that Marcus Freeman can ultimately get to that point too. But yeah, he had to, shift his perspective and his philosophy a little bit. And, you mentioned Mike Leach. I'm sure there's a lot of people that probably watched games and were like, man, Mike, if you would just like, if you would just
Run the
run the
football.
football. Yeah. If you could just swallow your pride a little bit. And I love Mike Leach. We love him here. And like I said, RIP, but
Always
if
have.
you would just if you would just swallow your pride for a minute and just run the freaking football, you could win this game. And his offenses were explosive by nature, but there's times you don't always have to be explosive either. Sometimes you have to know when to just run the ball.
Yes. So we did get a comment, and we're going to talk about this because I think it's actually a good philosophical question. But to add to your point, Saban didn't just adapt on the field. Look at what happened in recruiting, too. Remember, we used to always say that, or I used to, that Alabama was winning. And can you imagine what would happen when they got a quarterback? Because they had
Right.
Greg McElroy's, AJ McCarron's. They're winning national championships or going to national championships. After that, Tua, Jalen Hurts. I mean, Mac Jones is
Right.
a different guy, but Jalen Milroe. He changed the way that he went recruiting. All the wide receivers, instead of running backs, it was wide receivers that they started having. And so he changed his philosophy. But your dad brings up a good point about analytics. And this sort of, I think it's more applicable to the NFL. I don't know how much it comes into play in college because I think it might be a little bit different. But this again speaks to the idea of adaptation because Dan Campbell, big analytics guy, and he got kind of raked over the coals for being so married to analytics. And you said, well, you go with what got you there. But it kind of goes against a little bit of the adaptation. Maybe
Yep.
adapting is different in college than it is in the NFL. I don't know. But analytics is here to stay for certain. Like there's
Yep.
no going back.
Well, I know, and it's funny because not to keep bringing up Marcus Freeman, but again, he has like an analytics guy on staff that's literally next to him on the sideline at all times. So he's very entrenched in analytics as well, and so it drives a lot of his decision making. And so it is funny, like to see the parallels there between him and what we talked with Dan Campbell, and me sitting there like begging Marcus Freeman to like break away from the analytics a little bit, but then last year, saying, "Hey, man, like just dance with who brung you," sort of deal with MCDC. So definitely some hypocrisy there on my part, no doubt
That's
about
all I
that.
ask. That's all I
But
ask.
I'm, I come on, like if there's any hypocrisy,
So let me ask you a question though, because obviously we just talked about successful coaches, and now you're looking at Billy Napier in Florida, who's having his name chanted to get fired, and that's not great. Florida, I think we can both agree, was a program that had stature. I mean, they were a national powerhouse for a long time with Spurrier and even after Spurrier with the guy, Urban Meyer, but they were relevant for a long time. And they've gotten to a point now where they're one of those programs. I don't know if you can think of any others off the top of your head, but they've kind of fallen from grace. And in today's world, Florida as a state seems to be dominated by the U right now because Florida State stinks. And obviously, Florida right now stinks. And they're going to be turning over another head coach. They have fallen behind in the SEC when they used to be able to compete with the top. I mean, Missouri has passed them. Tough game against BC, but they get the win. What happened?
so Texas is one of those programs that was kind of in the same position a little, maybe not as ugly as it is in Florida right now, but that had won some national titles and really started to fall off. And then obviously Sark has done a great job of, they kind of cycle through a few coaches trying to get the magic back.
Yeah,
And Sark comes in and he's got it going again. And I think Florida will be the same way. You get the right coach in there, they'll get it going. What happened? I don't know. I think they've had some good football coaches come through there too, which is,
they have.
it makes it interesting that they haven't been able to have any success. Now, here's one thing that very few people are talking about. So with the 12-team playoff now, more teams are making the playoffs. So more teams are playing in the postseason, playing in meaningful postseason games. And so and those games are starting like what, in late December, mid late December, December 20th, somewhere
I
around
think
there
so. Yep.
is the first round. And then also the transfer portal is like, I think they changed it where the transfer portal only happens one time, and it's in like early December when the transfer portal opens, and the window like it's closed before the national championship happens or something. I mean, it's
Which
wild. There's
Michigan
some,
ran into,
yeah,
right?
and
Yeah,
and then like even signing day, I think signing day might be in there as well. Like, which is, they need to change the schedule because it's going to screw a bunch of shit up. But like, who's going to take the Florida job if Ole Miss makes the playoff and they try to hire Lane Kiffin? Is Lane Kiffin going to be like, I got Ole Miss in the playoff, but sorry boys, good luck to you. I'm going to Gainesville, um, and just going to leave them high and dry in the college football playoff? Like, I don't think you're going to see it, or even Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri. I don't think you're going to see a coach that's going to be willing to do that. At the same time, if you wait until, let's say you did make it to the national championship game or even the Final Four, if you wait until then, let's say you get knocked out and then go, well, guess what? Like, you can't recruit anybody. You can't sign anybody. You can't bring anybody out of the portal. Like, so what are you gonna do? You're gonna take over a depleted roster and not be able to bring anyone else in? Like, who the hell wants to go into that situation either? So, a very, very interesting situation. You wonder if it's almost gonna, like, some of these guys that are at these like second tier programs like the Ole Misses and the Missouris and places like that. What would have happened, if the 12-team playoff existed last year with Kalen DeBoer. I mean, just I know they were in the national championship game. It didn't stop him from taking the Bama job either way. But it's Alabama. That's a much different story than a depleted Florida program.
Well, and Nick Saban made that decision late,
Yeah,
right? A little bit
yeah.
later. I mean, because they were in the playoff too.
So they
So
probably had their roster in place, and he for the most part. I
yeah.
know there were some defections, but
Now, I kind of wonder too if Alabama hadn't already talked to some of the candidates when all that was happening. But anyway, that there's all that. But let me ask you though, because this is sort of off on a tangent, but I think objectively you're right in that I believe that Ole Miss would be considered a quote unquote B level or B tier program in the SEC. But does it matter who the coach is that we're talking about? Because you talked about Missouri. I would say going from Missouri to Florida would be a jump, I would say, in resources. But like Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, if he gets them to where they're perennial top five every single year, how much of an added benefit is there for him to move to Florida? Now, there's a lot more resources there. I get that. But can't he build an empire and sort of be happy getting paid a ton of money at Ole Miss and not have to jump within the conference in order to get a better job? I don't know. It's just something I think about. Like, does it matter that the person like Lane Kiffin seems different than some of these other guys?
I don't know enough about the economics of Ole Miss. I mean, I know that I think statistically Mississippi is one of the most impoverished states in the country, and so I imagine, although I'm sure there's some big business there and things like that, probably nothing compared to what exists in some of these. There's not a Tyson Foods in Arkansas that's going to be able to ride the buyout to bring John Calipari to town, and Walmart and everything else. That I
Yes.
don't know that something that any entities like that exist in Oxford, Mississippi, or the surrounding area. Um, so maybe there is a ceiling on the resources. I think maybe you're asking the question of if he does have enough success, is there a ceiling on the resources, or is it a glass ceiling that he can break through and turn them into a legitimate power? I tend to believe, without having the information, that there probably is a pretty hard ceiling on that potential there, but I could be completely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he was considered for the Alabama job, but that's different, right? Alabama has a pedigree that comes with, I mean, Florida does too, but Florida is also a state that's very saturated, right? There's a lot of programs vying for supremacy in just recruiting in that state alone, not to mention all the other SEC teams that are trying to get in there. But I mean, I don't know. I think expectations play a role in it too, because you go to Florida, there's different expectations. At Ole Miss,
True.
you're kind of in this place where what they're doing now is like the best they've ever had. So they're just happier than a pig in shit that they're the number 6 team in the country and they can go to Wake Forest and just obliterate an ACC team no problem. I don't know. That'll be something we'll probably look to at the end of the season, because with all of this weird timing starting around Thanksgiving all the way until the national championship game, there's a lot of movement. A lot of
Yeah,
movement with all these teams that are not bowl eligible. You got all these bowl games, guys sitting out, coaches making these decisions. We're going to be here to cover it all. So we've got plenty of time
absolutely.
to cover all of that. Now, let's talk about the Pac 12. And this is before we get to the NFL. We got a lot more NFL to talk about this week, but the Pac 12, we kind of talked about it very loosely last week, but you hadn't seen it yet. Now, the Pac 12 looks like they're trying to gain relevancy. And when you talked to me offline before we came on here, you said they're back, but not really. They
Okay.
grabbed 4 teams from the Mountain West, all teams that are state schools. So we got Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, San Diego State. Not powerhouses by any means, right? But they're adding B tier solid schools. And I think they're also looking at the Tulanes of the world. They're looking at some of these group of 5 schools. But the thing is, they're not going to ever be with the big boys. They're going to be
No,
sitting at,
it'll
they're
be a
going to be
group
like,
of five conference.
they're going to be like Pluto, right? They're going to be sitting at the kids' table at Thanksgiving. They're never going to be even an ACC. They just will not be.
No.
And is it worth it? Or should the Pac 12 have kind of cut their losses? They have the history. And Oregon State and Washington State should have gone and tried to get their way geographically into one of these big conferences. I feel like they lose out now.
Yeah, this to me this doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I'm guessing that there's some benefits to it that I'm unaware of, but on the surface, it doesn't look like it's beneficial. I mean, they're going to be on par with the American. Uh, that's just the reality of it.
That's what they're
And
looking to take schools
yeah, and then
from.
they're just going to be yeah. I mean, they're going to and they're the only two schools that give them any leg up on the existing Mountain West. Even I mean, there's just because that's San Diego State. I think they were in the Mountain West. Now they still are if the American had poached them, and now they're going to Mountain West, whatever. But like, uh, I think they would have been better off as just going independent, and just waited to see how things shook out nationally. Now maybe they were afraid they were going to get left out in the cold somehow. But I just don't see how being in this B minus C plus tier league that they're trying to drum up is going to do them any favors. It doesn't get them in a seat at the table in terms
No,
of the playoff, in terms of getting a bye in the playoff or anything like that. I mean, I guess if whoever comes out of that league is the top ranked group of five school, that gets them a guaranteed bid. But uh, I just don't see it.
I don't see it either, but I know why this is happening. It's dollars and cents. The Pac 12 commissioner still wants to be relevant, but the Pac 12 now, and I'll say this and we can clip this, it's dead. It's dead in the way that we knew it. And this is
Yes.
almost like when, like the Washington Nationals, whenever they celebrate the Montreal Expos history, that's not your history, right? Like it's completely different. Or when they skip over the Expos and they talk about the Senators from way back, right? This Pac-12 can't talk about. Like I'm not going to sit there and watch the Pac-12 championship game and see this montage of Oregon and USC and UC. Like I'm not doing that. Like this is just to me. They should rename the conference, rename it something else. It's a group of five. But again, Oregon State, Washington State are two programs that they have the opportunity to be in a better position. And again, I just think that they lose out here. And also, if you're going to go for the Mountain West, why the hell are you not going for Air Force? Man, get us feeling patriotic in here. Don't leave the old, don't
Well,
leave the Falcons out.
it sounds like the American has like an inside track to Air Force trying to get all the service academies together,
That's good.
in one conference, which makes sense. And it's the American conference. Come on, right? How much more patriotic can you get than that? So it'll be real interesting, man. I think that shoot with the way some of these pro teams, maybe they should to make a run at the Rams and the Raiders and even the Broncos if
Panthers.
the wheels fall. Get
Jesus,
them to join them.
my God. But the thing is now, I kind of wonder if you got these the Power Four conferences, and I wonder if these Group of Five conferences now are going to try to almost make their own Power Four, right? To where the Group of Five conferences all just sort of clump into. So you got 64 Group of Five, 64 Power Five, and then they have the chance at making the like almost with our powers combined sort of a situation. Because I don't see these conferences like the American Mountain West just poaching from each other, like just all get together in bed.
Yeah, it could be, man. I do think all this stuff is slowly shaking out to resemble something very similar to what we talked about the first time we ever did a sports podcast together.
We actually, so at the end of the season, if there's more conference realignment, I think what would be fun is if we take what we did in that episode and kind of go over it, right? As like at the end of the season, how right were we 2 years ago? And maybe how full of shit were we 2 years ago?
Right.
Because we had a lot of similar teams, but we thought about it in a different way, which was really, it laid the groundwork for where we are now because we do that the same way. When we talked about Caitlin Clark, you took the business approach. I took the basketball approach. I think you took a business approach or you took a football approach. I took a business approach for that. So like we've grown a lot, but that episode, it really was the foundation of like what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was almost, God, I don't want to say we were pioneers because man, did we know a year later that the whole thing would blow up? We were speculating at that point, and so much of it has come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely, it has. And I mean, and maybe the writing was on the wall, but it happened a lot faster than a lot of people thought it would. I
Way
think.
faster. I mean, we talked to Budge, and before we could get that episode out, everything changed. So
Yes.
our
Yeah.
episode was completely null and void by the time I think somebody first commented, "Well, that aged well," and it's like, I mean, look, I mean, we recorded
Right.
it 2 days ago. I don't know what you
Yeah.
want from me. We didn't know. What can I say? But can we take a victory lap together? This is the first
Love
week
to.
this year that Notre Dame and Virginia Tech both won in the same
Woo!
week. So I mean, look, Old Dominion was game for a half, and the Hokies looked good in the second half. But that's not the story. The Boilermakers had nothing on the scoreboard, on the field, nothing, and yet still you felt that it was disappointing, or were you being facetious?
No, I was being facetious for sure. Being facetious, 100%. Um,
Your dad
of
wasn't.
course, there's still people. No, he's good.
I know, I know.
There's still people who were definitely like just morons. They were disappointed. A lot to like about what happened in that football game, even beyond just the score. I think that we saw some of the adjustments we wanted to see with what Notre Dame did offensively. The defense showed up, and what's crazy to me is Purdue didn't pull their starters the whole game.
That's
Like,
dangerous.
it was insane. I'm like, "What are they doing?" Hudson Card, I felt so bad for him. He's out there down
Oh,
66-7, man, and he's still taking snaps. He's just running for his life, just getting crushed, and I'm like, "Why?" Like,
and what's the point?
I
What's the
mean,
point of
yeah,
that?
I don't know what point their coach was trying to prove. I mean, Notre Dame played 4 quarterbacks. Now, CJ Carr that played late, I mean, he took, like, 4 snaps and handed the ball off. So, I mean, he didn't do much, but, I mean, they played 4 quarterbacks. I mean, they cleared their bench, which is fun to see because, like, we've heard about a lot of this young talent that Notre Dame has been bringing in. We haven't, we haven't seen all of it yet, and so to get to see some of these guys get on the field, and you're just like, "Holy smokes, man!" Like, it was impressive to see some of these young guys, and not so obviously they've got a lot to learn, but just their athletic ability in general. Um, the stuff that's like you can't coach was really impressive, and definitely a step up from what people are used to seeing from Notre Dame in the past. So it'll be fun to see. I hope that things go well this season, and this staff can stay intact long enough to reap the benefits of the young talent that's coming up.
You always want to see that, but that's why the blowouts, I mean, they're not fun to watch, but they're great from a football perspective because players get reps. They
Yeah,
get game time, game speed, and you get to evaluate them in an actual game situation. And that's where Virginia Tech doesn't get that luxury because they play close games every damn week. So we never get to see like what's underneath. And I would rather have a 63 to nothing game, one, for my blood pressure, and two, for being able to see what you got. Right? That's how you test out your recruiting. That's how you test out who can be the next man up if somebody gets hurt. And you hate for it to have to be in the biggest game of the year. But it is what it
right.
is. Virginia Tech sucks, at least compared to Notre Dame, I think. I think Notre Dame had a wake up call a little bit, and they came out not only win, but they came out looking way better than I think everybody thought that they would. There's a lot of doubt heading into this week. And to say it again, they left no doubt, and that's good.
We saw the things that we needed to see, to at least feel like things are moving in the right direction. Miami of Ohio comes in this week, another MAC school. So, there's been talk. Notre Dame has not fared well against the MAC. And now, granted, they haven't necessarily lost like they did to NIU, but they've had some real close games against the MAC schools over the last decade. I would quit scheduling them, I think, at this point. But we got Miami of Ohio coming in to South Bend this week, and Chuck Martin, the head coach at Miami of Ohio, former coach at Notre Dame at one point in time.
Never good.
So, it'll be interesting. And who knows? Who knows what sort of secrets Northern Illinois, being conference partners with Miami of Ohio, who knows what sort of secrets they maybe shared about how they solved the Irish. But,
Do you think they do? Or do you think there's a competitive rivalry where they say, now get
well,
out of here?
I don't know. It depends. It just probably depends on the coach's relationship. I don't know if you heard this little tidbit though, but the Northern Illinois coach actually like reached out to Marcus Freeman and was like, "Hey man, like I'm here to help. Like we're here to help however we can moving forward in your season. If you would like to know like some of the things that
What
we
we
saw,
know?
well,
Yeah.
if you would like to know of like how we basically exploited you, like and like the things that we saw, I'd be happy to share that with you." And Marcus Freeman took him up on it. It's just
Well, he should, because you're
yeah.
never going to see those guys this season
Yeah,
again.
they'll never play him again, probably. I
And they're
mean,
going to share, like, they're going to now get asked by every other team that Notre Dame has to play.
right.
They're getting a phone call, right? Because they're
Probably,
like,
yeah.
hey, can we get that Notre Dame tape? Because
Yeah,
look, they did exploit them,
yeah,
right? So Marcus Freeman wouldn't be doing his job if he didn't get that, spread it out to his coordinators, and they look at it and say, we need to shore these up. We need to
yeah.
fill these gaps. If they don't do that, then they deserve to get fired.
Yeah, I'm happy that I'm proud that Notre Dame has a coach that's not too proud to take that advice and information.
Just too proud to actually open up the offense. But so they're 28-point favorites at home. We'll get to that one now. How do you feel about it? You gonna
I
cover?
feel good. They should cover if to build on last week. They should cover. I think that we want to keep seeing them take steps forward. That's just it. Like let's just take another step forward. Let's put two good performances together on both sides of the ball. Uh, that's progress, in my opinion. Let's we did. I hate saying we. I hate fans that say we. It's just so tough
You're
not
part
to.
of the team, man.
I
Just
know.
you line up with them and get that gold helmet on.
Nah, I know. Notre Dame, they did lose 3 players against, um, against Purdue, 2 offensive linemen and 1 defensive lineman for the season, most likely. One of the offensive linemen may return. It's still up in the air, but the interesting part is on the Notre Dame offensive line, the 2 guys that came in, they actually they replaced the 2 starters who got injured were replaced by 2 more experienced guys. So it's Notre Dame did go with the young talent on the O-line when it came down to it. And so they have some more experienced guys with maybe not quite as high of a ceiling, but a lot of starts under their belt and a lot of game experience. So it's nice to have that to fall back on. Um, as a as a coaching staff and things like that. So let's see how those 5 guys play together. And you got Louisville waiting here in next weekend. So let's get those 5 guys playing together as a unit, kind of knock the rust off a little bit, get that familiarity, and obviously get the win. Move on to Louisville.
Well, let's stick with Homer talk. So Rutgers travels to Blacksburg to face my Hokies. Now, Rutgers is a program that we used to beat up on. I'm not gonna lie, but now that they're in the Big Ten, Greg Schiano, the coach there again after success, like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech again, a slow start, decent finish against ODU. And I feel like they're one of those teams that is just not going to knock your socks off in the first half, but they're going to take control against inferior opponents. 3.5-point favorites at home. Look, Rutgers, I'm not going to sit here and tell you is like a good program in the Big Ten, but they play in the Big Ten. They play top tier talent year after year. Greg Schiano has seen it. He's also coached in the NFL, not very successfully. I'm just not convinced that Virginia Tech is a tough football team. I just feel like they're a soft football team. And if there's one thing that Greg Schiano does not have, it is soft football teams. This game, I say this every week. I hate this game. This game makes me nervous.
You sort of answered the question, but I'm curious if there's more to it. What do you think is missing right now from Virginia Tech's football program?
I can't believe I'm going to say this. A tough head coach.
I think it's too nice.
Maybe. I'm just not convinced that Brent Pry is really any different than Frank Beamer in the approach. I think that the community of Blacksburg likes a guy like Brent Pry because when they had Fuente was the exact opposite. Didn't participate in anything in the town, was kind of prickly, all football, one of those delicate geniuses. Is that whatever Trump said? But like the whole point is he was completely different and people didn't like him. He rubbed people the wrong way. Brent Pry is a guy who had been there before, right? He's from the area, not Blacksburg, but like from Southern Virginia. And he checks all of those like social boxes. But the football team itself, like they have no business looking this soft this year. And they just do. And I'm sorry, that is a reflection on the coaching staff. And at the end of the day, a reflection of the head coach. I'm not saying he's a soft man, but the team is soft right now. And it's got to go somewhere. And I'm sorry, I'm looking right at the head coach.
So do you think that maybe there's a lack of accountability a little bit when it comes to maybe the assistant coaches or, of course, down to the players on the field when there are mistakes, like maybe they're not being pushed hard enough?
It's very possible. Look, I get it. Okay. Today's player.
I know you're at practice. Come on, man. Give me the.
Well, no, but today's player is different. And I think we can talk about this just in our workplaces and going out in everyday life. Like people that are 20 years younger than us are different. They think differently. They respond differently. They are coached differently. They have to be coached differently. But there is a fine line between being a player's coach. I feel like, man, only a few of them get it right because it's so difficult to be the guy that the players like, but also be the boss. And look, at the end of the day, these kids are getting paid, but you're their boss. So like player coaches don't work in NIL as much because look, they're getting paid now. Like, I don't know. Like I just don't think that it works, but I'm happy to be proven wrong.
I think it's interesting because you could say that being an asshole drill sergeant style coach doesn't work either.
It's a fine line.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line, and it really comes down to like you can be whatever kind of coach you want to be if you're winning football games. I mean, like Kirby Smart comes across like I bet you he's hard to play for.
Oh, good lord,
That
yes.
dude seems like he will get in your shit in 2 seconds. You don't care who you are. But you know what? When you're winning football games and you got a couple national titles under your belt, you can get away with that. You can do that. Same thing with maybe being a player's coach that's more like the Jimmy Johnsons of the world, right? When you're winning, you can be that player's coach. Um, because you've got the chops, so when you do need something out of your team, they'll make sure they take care of you, this and that, because they know you're leading them to the right place. So, um, we talk about time. Winning solves a lot of problems, and rights a lot of wrongs and all that stuff. So, be interesting to see where they go. We did say, I think, early in the season, man. I remember talking about how we would see how this Virginia Tech team handles adversity. Now that there's a little bit of expectation around the program, and so far, not great, right?
I would say not great. They need to look physical, right? They are a team that has a great running back, and their offensive line has just not looked physical. Now they did in the second half against ODU, but that's ODU. I want to see this against top tier opponents. I want to see this against a team that is going to match you, right, hitting you in the mouth. And this is the kind of game that I want to see. I want to see how they respond in the trenches. I want to see how gritty they can be. I want them to
Yeah.
win that kind of gritty football game, get out of town, and be ready to go for the next game because it's not going to get any easier. The ACC slate is not going to be easy for them. But look, I'm a little, again, I'm a little worked up because I want them to do well. Like, I want them
Well,
to be better.
and I mean, let's just be honest. Like Virginia Tech is not, more often than not, if to win the games that they would need to win to be contenders, they're not going to be the most talented team on the field in most cases, right?
Nope.
And so when you don't have the most talented team on the field, you need to at least be able to hang your hat on or fall back on that. You know what? Like we're going to play hard, and we're going to play hard for 4 quarters. Blah 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 blah, and at the very least, this team's going to know they were in a ball game. And so you can't be the lesser talented team and the less tough team. And right
No.
now, they're kind of both a little bit.
Yeah, right now that they are. You're absolutely right. So we got 4 games to talk about really quickly as we move on to the NFL. So we're going to kind of go through these a little bit faster than we normally would. But Illinois traveling to Nebraska. Nebraska is 7.5 point favorite at home. Both of these teams, I think, in the Big Ten are one of those. Can they be sleepers in the Big Ten? And which one has arrived? Now we did talk about this in Crunch Time, which we're going to post tomorrow if you want to listen to who we picked. But I kind of like Nebraska here to win the football game outright. Not talking about the spread here because I think they're playing at home. I think they have a quarterback that's got some moxie, but don't cut out the Illini because they have some tough, gritty wins. And Brett Bielema, I think, is the head coach
Yeah.
there. Not only loves himself some barbecue, but he knows how to win some football games.
Well, I think that Illinois is, they've been where Nebraska is right now. I mean, Nebraska's more talented than Illinois has been the last couple of years, but Illinois was supposed to be where they are now. Last year, everybody kind of expected them to, okay, like Illinois is going to be um, uh, a team to be, reckoned with, so on and so forth. And it was probably a little premature, right? And they hadn't quite gotten it together yet. They've sort of worked through some of that stuff, and now this year they seem to have hit the ground running. They're prepared for these challenges that lay in front of them. Nebraska might be feeling themselves a little bit, and there've been a lot of media, a lot of talk around Nebraska and about how good they're looking, and they've looked really good. But I just feel like Illinois is more like on a business trip here, and Nebraska is more like, I don't know. It feels like they're kind of, I don't know, they're feeling themselves a little bit. I don't
That's
like
fair.
this game, man. If I'm a Cornhusker fan, this game freaks me out because I feel like it's just 2 teams that are in 2 different places right now, and the place that Illinois is in currently lends more to them getting a win in this sort of a situation.
I think if they were at Illinois, I'd be with you on Nebraska fans hating this game, but you do feel a little bit better when it's at home because it is easier to play in front of your home crowd. Lincoln Riley and USC traveling to the big house to play Michigan. Now, this is going to be something we see every single year. This is a matchup that still, to me, doesn't feel like a conference game, but here we are. It's a conference game. Michigan is a team we said last week was a shell of themselves. And if they're going to disprove us and call us assholes, this is the game that they're going to do it. I think you believe that it's going to be a little bit closer, but that USC is still going to pull out the victory. And I just feel like Lincoln Riley, I don't know, maybe he's gotten some things together and he's going to win some of these big games, but this could be a statement win for sure on more early on in his tenure.
Yeah, possibly. I think that with the quarterback change that happened in Michigan this week, sometimes it's not always about going with maybe who you think the best guy is, the most talented guy. Sometimes you just need to shake things up a little bit. And maybe this is, I don't know, maybe the locker room is behind an orgy a little more. Uh, but this could be the sort of thing that lights a spark under the team and gets them going. And we'll see kind of, what sort of learning curve is in place for Sharon Moore throughout these first few weeks and where he's at. Similar to our conversation about Nebraska and Illinois, though, granted, Michigan coming off a national championship, but we've discussed here the cupboard is bare, right? They are essentially rebuilding. I mean, I don't think that there's any other way you could describe it. And so, um, Lincoln Riley has already been through this, and they are finally, I think, on. They are ascending at this point, or at least supposed to be. That a lot of the working out the kinks should be behind him by now. So I feel like they're more maybe primed to get this win, but they're going on a road, going on the road nearly across the country into a tough environment. I know there's a couple tough places to play in the Pac-12, the old Pac-12,
Camp Randall,
Autzen Stadium, but like, going to the Big House, man, is that's a different place.
it's no
And
joke.
no, it's for real. And I think that I do expect though that Michigan's going to keep this thing close. I don't necessarily expect them to win, but I think that Sharon Moore is going to shut some people up, myself included, by the performance that they put together this Saturday. I anticipate that Michigan's going to they're going to be game, man, and they're going to show up and they're going to keep it close.
If they hadn't played Texas, I think they'd be in trouble. But having played Texas, be embarrassed by them, I think that's an opportunity for Sharon Moore to go in, coaching staff go in. I agree with you. They learn a lot from that experience, but I think USC is just still more talented, even though it is a road game.
Yeah,
Another game
UFC
that,
by 40
yeah,
is
yeah,
what
that's
what
right.
that means.
Yes. So another game that doesn't look right on paper, but is a conference game, Tennessee and Oklahoma. So Tennessee has looked amazing so far this year. And I think the big story is obviously Tennessee's head coach, Josh Heupel, returning to Oklahoma, where he was fired by Bob Stoops as offensive coordinator back in the day. And obviously there's a lot of history there. Now, this is a game where that could be a distraction. Tennessee is coming in looking really good. I think I texted you that they were up 37-0 at the end of the first quarter against Kent State, and they obviously have looked great. They look good against NC State on the road. I wouldn't consider NC State a powerhouse by any means, but that's probably the best team that they've played so far. But this is going to be a test for them, and this is one of those I feel like a lot of SEC people are saying, Oklahoma, if you want to be considered an SEC team, got to win this game.
I don't think got to win this game to be considered an SEC
You know
team,
what I
but
mean
definitely,
by
yeah,
that.
yeah. You got to show up. I think that there's more distractions surrounding Tennessee than there are Oklahoma in this case. Sure, people are talking about it being Oklahoma's first SEC test to see if they belong, but yeah, with all the Heupel stuff, being a former quarterback at Oklahoma, fired as the OC. Obviously, there's a lot of hype and expectations around Tennessee this year. They're a very good football team, but Oklahoma is not Kent State,
No,
and
no.
um, or even NC State. So and it's on the road. That's another place it's difficult to play, and I think that the fans there in Norman are going to be jacked. They're going to be psyched, ready to go. So it's just a lot of little storylines here. Obviously, welcome to the SEC for Oklahoma, all the Heupel stuff, but I feel like there's been less distractions around the Oklahoma program this week. They've probably been more focused, or at least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I expect the Sooners to hang tough.
Last but not least, Utah at Oklahoma State. State of Oklahoma has some good games this weekend. So Mike Gundy and you got Cam Rising over there. Now, Utah is favored on the road here. Now, this is the kind of game that both of these squads historically would lose, right, in their quest to win their conference. But somebody's got to win here. I think Oklahoma State, in my opinion, because of that Arkansas win, they get an SEC team coming to town. They have to go to overtime, but they get the W. And Mike Gundy, again, he's been there for a long time, seen a lot, and hasn't won a lot of the big games. Maybe one of those guys we talked about before, because he's a man now. He's 50. But this one's going to be interesting because I think it's going to be super, super tight. And you got two older quarterbacks, which is something you don't see very, very often. But what do you think about this game?
Well, Mike Gundy and Cam Rising went to high school together, I think, so there may be some
Ca
familiarity there.
Cam Rising's in his, like, 8th or 7th or 8th year of
Um,
eligibility. Now, injury had a lot to do with that,
yeah,
so give the guy a
it's
pass.
but yeah, a lot of experience on both sides at the quarterback position, as you mentioned. Uh, a game both these teams have historically struggled in. So, despite their best efforts, one of them is going to have to win. But I think whoever does win this game really puts themselves in the driver's seat in the Big
Yes.
12. And I mean, I think that, some team like Kansas State might have something to say about that down the road. But for right now, these two teams are looking very strong. And this is the first sort of tipping point for who's going to continue to ascend to the top and who's going to have a hole to dig themselves out of. I don't know that the Big 12 can, I don't know that you can say confidently that the Big 12 is guaranteed multiple bids to the playoff at this point in time. So you don't want to count on that. I mean, um, you're going to get one for sure, but it just depends on how things shake out. And we've talked about the SEC. Of course, the Big Ten's going to get a few and whatever. So, which there's a whole narrative there. Narrative there is Notre Dame a bid stealer? You know what I mean? Like when it comes down to the end of the season, but gonna be a good football game. Excited to watch. I think it's gonna be a well played football game. I think you're gonna get that when you have two experienced quarterbacks. Gonna be a great environment in Stillwater. What a weekend, man! What a Saturday to live in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I agree.
Two
Well,
big time football games. So,
yeah, shout out to all of our
holy
listeners
crap!
and friends in Oklahoma because
All
I
of
do
our
know a couple
listeners in
people.
Oklahoma.
Yes.
Great weekend for football in Oklahoma, and I think that I told you I think the Sooners are going to be game, and I think I'm with the Pokes, man. I think the Cowboys are going to get her done.
Packed slate in college football in terms of ranked matchups. So something to look forward to. But I think we need to talk about the NFL because a lot did happen. So a lot of this is sort of off the field stuff. But first thing I think we have to mention, we talked about it 2 years ago when we first started Iceman and Coach, but Tua, again, as we were broadcasting last week, Tua became concussed and it got confirmed. We didn't know at the time. So this whole narrative has happened here where he is concussed. He was put on IR, I think, last night or today. So he's going to be out at least 4 games. So that's not really what anybody's talking about. We discussed 2 years ago, and I think we're probably both in the same boat that we hope that his family helps him make this decision. But this is 3 or 4 concussions now that not only does Tua had, but we've seen on national television, which is just so strange to see it. And also the fact that it was Damar Hamlin who made the hit is just crazy
Totally wild.
coincidence. Totally wild. But I feel like Tua still wants to play. There's a lot of money stuff involved, but do you still feel the same way? Or do you feel like, look, man, I get it. You want to play football, but at some point in time, you've got to think about the bigger picture.
Yeah, this dude is or someone's I mean, I'm sure people are. I hope so strongly that there's people that are close to him that are in his ear and pleading with him to put his health and his family first. And you could, yeah, I guess the argument could be there. Well, if he's not playing, he's not going to be making millions of dollars, so him playing is putting his family for my guy. Like you've got a network of people behind you, from Alabama and everywhere else. You're going to land on your feet. You're going to be just fine. People aren't going to let you fail. The only way you fail in life is if you make, if you simply make the choice that you're not going to succeed in whatever you do. So the same drive that's made you successful as a football player can certainly find you success in other avenues. But one thing that bothers me a little bit, and I get it, man. Like no one else wants to tell a grown man what to do and what decision to make. But just that people are so publicly, whether it's Mike McDaniel or just the Dolphins organization as a whole, are just shying away from like taking like a position on this.
I'm
You know what I
glad you
mean?
brought that up. I'm
Like
really glad you brought that up
that
because go
bugs
ahead.
me. No,
No,
I don't have a lot I mean, it's just very uncomfortable to listen to them, like, try to, like, navigate their way through these questions when they get asked. It's so uncomfortable.
why can't they just say what's on their mind? I understand that 2 years ago, Mike McDaniel and the entire organization got raked over the coals for sending Tua out there after what we thought was a very notable concussion. Then we saw gang signs. Not a good look.
No.
But this time, they're going down the route of, well, he's the starting quarterback of his family. Dude, stop. Okay, stop. Because if it came down to it, the organization's going to put that man out there if they think that he can win football games for them. Hard stop. Like, there's nothing. You know what I mean? And like, the NFL and their inability to talk about the repercussions of playing a dangerous game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, and you're not either. We're not saying that football is ruining people's lives, blah, blah, blah. We were on that fence with DeMar Hamlin. We said, look, it's football. It happens. It was a freak accident. It's not football that caused that. This is football that is causing it, but he has a choice to make, and the organization has a choice to make. Now, the organization built in injury money for him that he could get if he's not medically cleared. And he could retire because of this and make, I think, $167 million. Look, if that ain't enough to get you successful for the rest of the year, I don't know
Yeah,
what to tell
good
you, man.
call.
Like, thing is he got the generational wealth, right? That was what he was worried about 2 years ago, was obtaining the generational wealth. Now, I understand, too, that the amount of money that he was making then, you and I would kill to make. But the point being is, relative to their market, he was looking to secure the bag for the rest of his life. He did that. I don't understand what else he has to prove. And the organization to me comes off phony because you know damn well that they would want him out there. They just would.
The scary thing about head injuries, concussions, I guess specifically, is that after like a week, you feel completely normal, like like it never happened. Um, especially at this point in time. Now, will there be repercussions down the road to his cognitive health? Absolutely. But like right now in the moment, like it's not like a knee injury where like you have like a catch in your knee forever. I just don't feel the same. I don't feel like I can cut on it like I used to. No, I mean you feel totally normal and the same. Like, and so that's what I'm afraid is going to lead to him getting back out there and continuing to play. It's like, bro, like your brain has been jarred loose like a few times, like legitimately like shaken up. I just don't I mean, it just depends. Like, do you want uh, you have tunnel vision. If you go back out there, you're so short-sighted and just looking at the next 5 years, hell, maybe the next 5 months, I don't know, and instead of the next, 50 years, because you keep at this, man. Like the next one could be the last one. I mean, you could be lights out. You don't know, and it won't take much now. Once you've
Yes,
had these things, man, it's so much easier. I mean, that hit was not violent at all whatsoever
it
that he
wasn't.
received.
It
You know what I
wasn't.
mean?
It,
And
it
his reaction was exactly the same, basically, as it was the concussion a couple years ago. And so it's not gonna take a whole lot, man, and the next one, it could be game over, and why would you wanna put your family through that? Or even, introduce that possibility of putting your family through having to see something like that happen?
I
Um,
agree. I
I
agree.
don't know.
It's uncomfortable, man. Like, it's not gonna stop me from watching football, but it's just I think about it from a humanity perspective because that's what we do, and I just wish he'd think a little bit differently. Everybody's gonna have opinion on this, and Tua's gonna be out there at some point, I'm sure. But I just hope 10, 15, 20 years down the road, he doesn't feel the effects of this because we've seen what it can do. And Tua's a nice guy. Tua seems like a super genuine guy. He'd make a great studio analyst. He'd make a great commentator. He's just got that smile, that look to him. So he's got avenues. He doesn't have to play football for a living, but I get it. He's a baller.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, I don't want to tell him what to do, but speaking of big balls, let's talk about Baker Mayfield.
Ooh,
So, Baker
ooh,
Mayfield
ooh.
takes his wheelbarrow, puts his balls on the wheelbarrow, and takes it to MCDC and the boys in Detroit. And I'm telling you what, if this game wasn't your just wet dream, I don't know what is.
I like I said in the notes, man, I don't know how Ford Field was able to contain that level of machismo that existed in that building
The
between
testosterone bowl.
MCDC and Baker and the boys and the giant balls. Um, my goodness. I and I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the Bucks. I think they've made a quick recovery after losing Tom Brady. I think that I kind of expected they'd really fall off and they would be pretty mediocre or close to irrelevant for a while, and it'd take them a bit to bounce back. But Baker has kind of been the saving grace, and they've got some other pieces too. I don't want to disparage the rest of the roster, but um, this one was tough, man. It's like watching your two kids, man. Or something. I love them both. Love MCDC and the boys, and love me little Baker. So, um, good game. Bucks get it done, and maybe they're proving now they are a legit contender in the NFC.
They feel like a team that's playing that they like they
I
don't have.
believe.
Well, yeah, but they have nothing to lose. That makes sense. Here's the thing I took away from that game. The Lions worried me a little bit because they made a gaffe at the end of the first half that cost them potential points. And Jared Goff hasn't looked that good, especially late in games. And I think,
Ever, really.
no, but their success has been predicated on cutting down the amount of mistakes that he can make with their game plan. And hopefully, this is not Jared Goff like completely crashing below the mean, because if that happens, they're going to be screwed. Like they're going to have to figure out another way. Now, I think Dan Campbell is has the ability to adapt, but that's what I took away. And I think this game is going to hurt when you talk about playoff seeding down the road. And this may cost them playing a home game or two in the playoffs, because I think the Bucks in that division, if the Saints come back down to earth, they have a chance to come in there and steal the division. I think that the Bucks could be for real.
I think so too. I mean, a long ways to go, but so far they look pretty damn good. There's no reason not to believe in the Bucks. And just that this, on the other side of the situation, I think that again, long ways to go. Plenty of time for the Lions to bounce back from this one as well. And but like you mentioned, there's definitely some cause for concern, possibly because these gaffes maybe that happen in end of halves and things like that isolated, they can be explained away, but, like, when they seem to continue to happen and happen in big moments, it kinda becomes part of your identity, right? And, I mean, I hope for the Lions' sake that they aren't the team that consistently finds a way to beat themselves, because, I mean, it's hard enough, man. It's hard enough to beat your opponent without, you helping them. So, we'll see where the Lions go from here.
So I kind of titled this a little clickbaity, but we don't want to talk about the Chiefs for a second. Now we've talked about this before too, and we kind of got a little bit of hate. But the Chiefs win a big game against the Bengals, and they do so with a very fortunately timed pass interference call at the end of the game. It's 4th and 16. Mahomes throws a pass. Bengals guy comes running through the receiver. Flag gets thrown, and I think it was the correct call. I think that they made the correct call in this moment. But I do have to ask you, because we've talked about this before, is it the perception that the Chiefs get fortunate calls when they really, really need them a lot? But you and I have both discussed this. They're the correct call whenever they're made. You know what I mean? And like that's where I kind of am like, man, this is tough, because it happens so often that it's hard not to think that they are just so fortunate. But not many of the calls, if any, are you like, man, that ain't a penalty.
Yeah, that was definitely passing interference,
Yes.
no denying it, and of course, the timing of it and the history, of course, is why there's so much chatter around it, of course, but I think that what's kinda being lost here is the fact that the Chiefs are so good that you have to you're seeing these other teams that are literally like they're playing outside of themselves, doing I mean, literally committing penalties, breaking the rules to just do anything to try to scratch and claw and win the game. And you can't fault them for that. Credit to the referees for making it's tough to make those calls in those moments, man. Especially, those guys aren't dumb, they hear the narratives, I'm sure. And to still kind of have the spine to make that call in that moment, it's the right call. And that's all that matters. But um, credit to those guys for that. And that's a good point. I did see the replay, and I do believe there was. I feel like I see a lot of holding, man. And I think people will tell you too, football people. There's holding on every freaking play, and I think really what it comes down to is, did I think one thing that the ref processes is did this holding impact the outcome of the play? If that guy wasn't held, is that guy in a position to make a play or not?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the credit, I think you should have that judgment. I know people that are very stringent, like the rules are black and white. I don't care if the holding happened 30 yards behind the play, where, if it's holding, it's holding. You should call it every time. I disagree with that. I think you got to have some discretion. But, uh, yeah, much to do about nothing, just because, when you get on top of the mountain, you got a lot of haters, and they wanna make every excuse they can. I'm not a Chiefs fan by any stretch of the imagination, but, um, it was the right call.
I think a fair criticism of the refs is to call the games consistently. But much like holding, if they called the games consistently, I wonder if we'd ever actually see any football, because we'd
Right.
see penalties every single time. And there's no way to make sure and ensure that they're going to call penalties the way that people think that they should. It's one thing if you're letting them get away with highway robbery all game and then you call that. Cuz like while that was pass interference, it was on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of egregious pass interferences. And if you're talking about holding. Now remember the first couple games of the season, the refs always have something that they need to focus on, and it was guys jumping like a half a second early on the line, and they're
Yep.
calling so many false starts. By the middle of the season, that stuff legislates itself out. It's just the fact that for the Chiefs, these happen in high-profile games at the end of the game. And look, that's what you need sometimes to win. I think they would still win the Super Bowl regardless. I mean, they're a great football team, so I think people kind of miss that point. But also, let's be fair when you're great, you get some leeway with the refs. I mean, Michael Jordan, famous for that. Tom Brady made some rules that are in place today. So it's not as if that isn't a thing and hasn't been in sports forever.
Yeah, I loved it, man. Like week 1, you saw a lot of those penalties where it was the guy not the guy wasn't lined up on the line of scrimmage. Like the tackle was lined up too far off the line of scrimmage, and then of course then was starting his kick slide early. And
Yes.
and remember we saw that early last year, and I think it was um, Chiefs Raiders. I want to say early in the season because it was Crosby's like the big DN like pass rush guy
Yep.
for the
Yep.
Raiders, and I think that the Chiefs tackle kept trying to get a head start essentially and was lining up like 10 miles off the line of scrimmage to try to do whatever he could to get an advantage. And people were so pissed because the refs didn't throw a flag on it a single time. And so I was cracking up, man, because I think it was the Ravens game I was watching, and it's like they threw the flag like literally 3 plays in a row. I'm like, I love it. I love that they're just over and over and over again. I thought John Harbaugh was gonna lose his mind.
Always an overcorrection. Like there's just always an overcorrection every single time. Last game that I want to talk about is actually something that includes my stat of the week. Iceman stat of the week, as I like to give every week. So, the Philadelphia Eagles and Nick Sirianni lose a heartbreaker on Monday Night Football. And this has been a trend for them. So, I have a stat on them since 2013. Are you ready?
Iceman, there's nothing I would love to hear more.
Okay, well, I ask you every week if you're ready. And,
Always.
I know you're always ready, but I'm still going to friggin' ask you. So, that's how it goes. All right, so since 2023, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, and the Philadelphia Eagles have 4 losses with the lead inside the final 2 minutes. Not great. This stat is also really, really bad. They have given up 140 points inside the 2-minute warning. Both of those are the most in the NFL.
Wow.
That's a lot of
Wow.
points inside 2 minutes.
Wow. Did Shane Beamer go to a coach's clinic in
Ooh, that's
Philadelphia?
mean. Come on, that's mean. But here's the thing, right? After the game, now Sirianni and Kellen Moore got a lot of shit because they made some questionable calls in terms of down distance and decisions that they made. Like Saquon Barkley has 3 touchdowns. They don't run him once in the first drive. Like, what is going on? Now, the play at the end of the game, Saquon drops the ball. So I get it. He gets that. They make a first down. We're probably not talking about this, but it was after the fact because the reporters asked him about it, and Sirianni was like, "You're just trying to stir stuff up." That's the stuff you've been talking about since the offseason. You cannot be that way and lose football games.
No, you can't. And I mean, the narrative is there because of the environment that he's created. So like that's this question he's being asked as a result of that. I
It's
don't
fair
think
too.
and it's a fair question. Yes, it's absolutely a fair question. Um yeah, you're not Bill Belichick, man. You don't get to sit up there and be like, we're moving on to New Orleans. Doesn't work,
Which
my friend.
I'm surprised he even got away with that.
Who, Belichick?
Yes,
Oh. Well, you could have pressed him all day. He wasn't going to give you anything.
I know, which was some of the best press conferences ever, by the way. But Sirianni, I'm not a Sirianni guy. Like, I never really have been. I don't mind quirky coaches, but something's rubbed me the wrong way about him.
Agreed. I don't know what it
And
is either exactly, but I agree.
yeah, so the Eagles, I don't know. We'll see. They still have a lot of talent. They didn't play with AJ Brown, so it's not as if they're playing with a full deck, but this is the kind of stuff that starts to percolate in the locker room, and you see how prickly he is with the media, and you said that there was still going to be some weirdness. This could be the start of it. So, look, well, I'm going to talk about a couple things. I'm going to do a rapid fire thing with you. So, hopefully you're ready. I'm going to
Yeah.
list off each 2-0 team, and I want you to tell me if they are for real or not with yes or no. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Buffalo Bills,
Yes.
Pittsburgh Steelers,
No.
Houston Texans,
Yes.
Los Angeles Chargers,
Yes.
Kansas City Chiefs,
Yes.
Minnesota Vikings,
No.
New Orleans Saints,
No.
Tampa Bay Bucks,
Yes.
Seattle Seahawks.
No.
How many of those surprise you?
Pittsburgh for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, New Orleans. Those surprised me. For sure.
Seahawks too, I think.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, they got out of New England by the skin of their teeth. So we'll see.
Yes.
We'll see where that goes.
All right.
But the
I know.
freaking 49ers and the Cardinals are really, really damn good in that division.
Steelers are abysmal to watch, by the way. Just some of the worst football being played. But Mike Tomlin is earning his paycheck. They are 2-0. Still a long way to go in this season. All right. 0-2 teams. I'm going to say the 0-2 teams. I want you to tell me if they have a chance to recover. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Baltimore Ravens,
Yes.
Cincinnati Bengals,
Yes.
Indianapolis Colts,
No.
Jacksonville Jaguars,
No.
Tennessee Titans.
No.
I just want to point out that 3 of the 4 AFC South teams are 0-2. That is shit.
They
Absolute
are who you
shit.
thought they were.
Good Lord. And now this one makes me really happy. Denver Broncos.
Yes.
Stop it.
Yes.
Stop
I'm there.
it.
Nope. Come on, man.
Bo Nix looks horrible.
No, they'll be all right. Young guy, great head coach.
Stop. New York Giants.
No.
No. This I don't even know why I'm asking. Carolina Panthers.
Definitely no.
Let me ask you something about them. Bryce Young gets benched. I thought the way that it happened was crappy because they asked the head coach after the game and he's like, Bryce is our guy. 2 days later, you're benching the guy. You're not doing him any favors by doing that.
No, dude, I feel like that's how it always goes.
No,
I
come
guess what he
on.
could have said is like, we'll reevaluate, we'll look at the
Yes.
film and evaluate. Is what he says.
Exactly my point. Look,
Yeah.
they ruined Bryce Young. I'm not saying Bryce Young would have
Maybe
been
he
a great
wanted him
NFL
to be the guy. Maybe he wanted to stick with him, and the GM's like, no, sir, you are
Dave
making a
Tepper is one of
change."
the worst owners in all of professional sports. He is such a gas bag. I can't stand that guy. He's the guy who was like yelling at a restaurant because they were giving the Panthers shit. I'm like, your team sucks.
They're
So
terrible.
what do you want? All right, Los Angeles Rams.
Yes.
You think they'll be okay? So they
I
might
think they
be
can.
tough because of the injuries. That's kind of why they're 0-2.
Coaching.
But Ravens at 0-2 is so surprising. But then if you look at the 2 games, it's like just they're like a hair away from being 2-0. I think the Bengals might be a little bit in trouble, but the AFC South just sucks. I mean, Anthony Richardson looked awful this weekend, and he lost to Malik Willis. I did not have that on my bingo card this week or this year for the NFL because Jordan Love's out.
Yeah, and they play the Bears this week, which may be an equally uninspiring game. I've been a little disappointed in
Bears haven't looked good.
Caleb Williams. It's just offense. They've been anemic on offense, and so we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm willing to give some of these rookie quarterbacks a pass. Very, very rarely do you see a rookie quarterback come out and just
I
light
agree.
things up. So
Yeah.
I'm willing to be patient, but like, holy shit, like you got to get something going on offense.
I mean,
You know,
it hasn't looked good. Also, the fact that he told his punter he wasn't going to be punting a lot this season, and he's punted like 11 of 16 drives since he sent that text message. Not great.
he'd fit right in here on the show.
Oh, he certainly would. All right. Couple of week 3 matchups coming up. Pats at Jets on Thursday night. This is only interesting because it's a completely different look for this rivalry. Aaron Rodgers, big game against the Patriots. I feel like the Jets have the advantage. Gerard Mayo has the Patriots playing better than I think everybody thought that they would. Over the course of the season, though, it's going to prove that they just don't have the firepower offensively. Jacoby Brissett in 150 yards a game is just not going to cut it, but that's kind of what you expect.
I like the Patriots more than you do. I think they're pesky.
They're
I think
pesky, but they're not good.
I think this game is going to. This is an important game early in the season in the division.
I think it's more important for the Jets.
Yeah, maybe so. But I think that whoever wins this game is putting themselves in position to contend. And
Patriots are not contending. I don't know how many times I can tell you.
Wait. We'll see. We'll see, my friend. You just wait. It's
Yeah.
September.
You're right, it's September. So when November comes along and they're like 3 and
and
9, I'll be like, I told you.
in the hunt for the wild
They
card.
are not going to be in the. If they're in the hunt, I will gladly be. My dad will be the happiest person on earth if they're in the hunt for the wild card. But that's a fascinating one. Although I do not like Thursday night football. Another one: Texans and Vikings. So Vikings a surprise 2-0 team. Texans on the road, I think, are favorites. But Sam Darnold has looked good over
He
two
has.
games. And I love that he's over there yelling at John Lynch. You never should have cut me. Look, you've been on like 5 teams. So like, what are we doing here?
That's wonderful.
Isn't it?
That's so great. From what I understand, like he's a really likable guy. Just pretty like ordinary, nothing like some of these guys are assholes. It doesn't sound like he really is. It sounds like he's pretty genuine. Um,
Got humbled real quick.
sure, of course he did, and I think it's gonna be like the Joe Flacco's, the Ryan Fitzpatrick's, some of these guys. Catch lightning in the bottle, win some games, but ultimately, I just don't think that he's gonna have. Um, the consistency to do this throughout the season and to keep the Vikings in the hunt for a playoff position. It doesn't take away from how impressive it's been so far and how well
Sure
he's been
thing.
playing. I just don't think that if he had shown the ability to sustain this at any point in time in his career, like he would still be starting somewhere else and he wouldn't be in Minnesota by now. Not, I'm just saying the odds are not in his favor. Very rarely do we see a guy all of a sudden get his shit together in his fifth stop.
I agree.
So you know what I mean.
It's
As
different.
exciting and as fun as it is, just the odds are against him. But hey, and here for it. It'll be a fun story. The more he keeps winning, the it'll be fun. It'll be something to talk about here. But I just, CJ Stroud is a legitimate young starting quarterback.
I
Kind of
agree.
proven to be the antithesis of what Sam Darnold was when he came into the league. So
Yep.
that I favor the Texans.
Eagles traveling to New Orleans to face the Saints. This is one of those games where I feel like, what are we going to find out about you for both of these teams?
Yeah.
Eagles need the win. I mean, the Saints have looked really good. They haven't played a close game yet, which is just amazing. Alvin Kamara, can he keep this up all season long? Running backs generally tend to have a precipitous fall as they get into his age range. But the Eagles, I think, need this win. If they come out looking stinky again, ooh, I'm telling you, fans in Philadelphia are not going to like that.
Yeah. If the Saints do the Eagles what they did last week, ooh, it could get hairy fast, like you said.
I'm here for it too, by the way.
But like this, if the NFL has taught us anything, it's that you have the Saints coming in off of a huge win, you have the Eagles coming in off of a disappointing loss. This is totally like set up for the Eagles to come in and look fantastic and take care of business, and the Saints to look like the team we thought they were, and everything else. It's just the second you think you got it figured out in the NFL, they pull a switcheroo on you, and and I feel like that's what we might see this week because there's probably a lot of people who feel really good about New Orleans and have a lot of questions about Philadelphia, like we do, and that's probably why Philadelphia is going to go and light it up.
Chargers traveling to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers. Steelers are 1.5 point favorites at home in this game. I don't understand this. Like, they have had no good offense whatsoever. I'm pretty sure they've only kicked field goals. And yet they're hosting the Chargers, who have looked, I think I said it during crunch time, they've looked like a Big Ten team. Justin Herbert has not been slinging the ball. And I'm sure that's by design, but this should be one of those grinded out Big Ten looking games here. And I'm curious to see if Mike Tomlin can get even mediocre quarterback play, or if Jim Harbaugh can actually let Justin Herbert do what he does best. He's got a cannon.
Yeah, this is gonna be a good old fashioned slobber knocker, right? Between two old
Great
school head
word.
coaches and that play great defense and run the football. And it's really just gonna come down to like it's not gonna be a fun game to watch. I can almost promise you that. This will not be an exciting football game to watch for most fans. The football purists will love it. The 60-year-old boomers will be like, this is what football was meant to be. But I I mean, it'll be a very fundamentally sound football game, and I think it'll be a close game. It'll just come down to the little things like who doesn't turn the ball over, who makes the fewest mistakes, all those things.
Of course.
Um, and I feel good about the Chargers in this one. I mean, I've been high on the Chargers the whole time, and maybe maybe Harbaugh's playing the long game. Let's bring these secondaries up here. like grinding it out, and then we're gonna start taking our shots. Here in a couple weeks once we've bamboozled some of these defensive coordinators with our run game.
Man Campbell and the Lions in Arizona against Kyler Murray and Marv. Now, Marv had a breakout game this past week, and the Cardinals looked really good, but they're one of those teams where I feel like not sure, right? Because they lose the first game. Marv has one catch for 4 yards, and then bam, they're finally on the same page. And of course, you got the Lions who come off of that loss to the Bucks, traveling on the road, need a big win. Expectations, both of these teams kind of need this win, but for different reasons.
Oh, 100%, man. Lions trying to bounce back, Arizona trying to get, put two wins together, two good performances. And I was like, are the Rams supposed to be shitty this year? I mean, when I
Lots of
saw that
injuries.
score, I was
Lots
just
of
blown
injuries.
away. Yeah. And we see this, man. Like, there's so much parity in the NFL that it's like one team gets blown out one week, and the next week they go out there and beat the best team in the league. So, so much of it comes down to game planning too. Just if you got a shit game plan, it's really hard um, to play your way out of it in the midst of a game, especially if the other team's got a really good game plan. And maybe it's something like that's what happened. But just not, I don't know, surprised to see Sean McVay get outclassed like that a little bit by a young head coach, nonetheless. So uh, curious to see if Kyler Murray can keep it going. Obviously, Marv's a shiny new toy. The guy is extremely talented. Will be an interesting game. I think kind of, some contrasting styles here, and we'll see who gets the win. But I mean, I like the Lions, man. You know that MCDC all the way.
Could be the game of the weekend. Ravens traveling to Dallas to face the Cowboys. Now, both of these teams need a win for different reasons, but I think the Ravens need it more because 0-2 now, or 0-2 used to be an indictment. It was really tough to make the playoffs from 0-2. Traditionally, statistically, you didn't make it. With that extra game, I think you have a little bit more leeway. So 0-3, though, especially in that division, they're burying themselves in a really, really deep hole. And even if Dallas loses 1-2, that division, because the Eagles we're not really sure about. So in the rest of the division, Commanders, Giants, like they still have a chance. So Ravens really need this desperately, but they're going to have to play a team that just got blown out. So it's not like there's no gimmies here in the NFL.
No, I mean, I guess I would assume that the Ravens are in slightly more of an elevated
Defensive.
desperation mode
Yes.
than the Cowboys are for probably some of the reasons you stated. There's like the NFC East is not what it used to be, and you know the AFC North on the other hand. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty there right now too. Obviously, Pittsburgh's been pretty steady, but Cincinnati lots up in the air, and Cleveland's Cleveland. So. Yeah, I don't know that this a loss here for either team really like takes it off the rails for you, but it's a hell of a lot harder to come back from 0-3 than 1-2. Um,
100%.
one game really does make the difference. So I think you're going to see a very motivated, borderline desperate Baltimore Ravens team, and I just think John Harbaugh is a better coach than Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
That too. What happens
Obvious.
to the Cowboys? I mean, if they get boat raced 2 weeks in a row.
So you know how I felt. The Cowboys were a mid to below average team. I saw them 8-9, 9-8 at best this season. So I think that kind of fits in there. But they're not going to make any drastic moves. Jerry's not going to just get rid of everybody. But this is the kind of game where I feel like Lamar is going to go off. He's going to have like 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, going to account for like 4 touchdowns because he's just tired of this team looking this way. And the poor Cowboys could be on the brunt end of that. Last game I want to talk about, Chiefs, who just got that big win against the Bengals, traveling to Atlanta to face the Falcons, who also had a big win in prime time. This one's fascinating because Chiefs obviously have a target on their back. Atlanta, the Mercedes Dome, going to be loud. They obviously just got a big win on the road. They're feeling a lot better about Kirk Cousins, but I'm still not convinced that Kirk Cousins isn't less than 100%. And Mahomes is Mahomes. The Chiefs are always going to be consistent, and even when they lose, you can't count them out because we've done that and they've won 2 straight Super Bowls.
All I'm thinking is like that. How could anybody possibly watch Kirk Cousins just at how he plays and be like, he don't look 100%? I think that his default is just slightly less than
It's
100%.
not like the stats, it's just like there's not as much zip
He's
on
getting old,
on his
man.
arm. No, he's not only getting old, but he recovered from an Achilles injury. So like what I'm saying is that maybe he's not quite 100% yet. And if they can get by winning until he gets more comfortable and starts to look a little bit more. I mean, 36 is not ancient for a quarterback, especially a guy like him. So I feel like he takes care of himself. He just hasn't looked as confident in the pocket as I feel like he did in Minnesota a lot. Maybe that's because Justin Jefferson ain't one of his targets. I have no idea. That's all I'm saying. Is he just hasn't looked like the Kurt like of
Hey,
last
man,
year or the year before. That's all.
what he's learning is it takes a lot out of you to push mow your backyard in your New Balance and your jean shorts and button up plaid shirt
New Balance might be a little bit too
down in
exciting for him.
down in Atlanta, Atlanta, than it does in Minnesota, man. It's taking a lot out of the guy. He's not used to the humidity. Um, I don't know. I like it, man. I like that he had a good game in prime time the other night. This one's in prime time as well against reigning Super Bowl champs. I'm here for it, man. I'm rooting for Kirk, and I'd like to see him and the Falcons get it done. I want to see someone. I want to see someone that wants to step up and contend for the NFC South with Baker. The Saints are trying to make a case for the NFC South may end up being the best division of football by the time it's all said and done.
Oh God. Well, I don't know.
Sans the Carolina
Sans
Panthers.
the Carolina. I was gonna say, wait a minute, hold up, time out. There is a packed NFL slate, and it's still so early in the season. I feel like we're not going to know anything after this week, but either way, somebody knows something, and it is Coach. Coach's pick of the week improves to 6-0 after picking Bama to roll the Wisconsin Badgers in Camp Randall. You said it wasn't anything to be intimidated by. You were correct. You're 6-0. So people want to win some money. They are waiting on bated breath. They've been waiting all night. Please bless us with a pick of the week.
Hear ye, hear ye.
Came in hot there.
I know why the two of you who are still watching are still here, and that's because you're ready to make some money this week by finally following the so far perfect pick of the week. This week's pick was a difficult one to make. I scrolled and scrolled trying to find another pick that spoke to me. The way they just jump off the screen at me. It's like pick me, and I just keep scrolling. And I'm like, I can't pick you. I gotta find another one. I can't. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do this. And I searched and searched, and I kept coming back to the same game, because like I said, it spoke to me, man. And so, as you know, as we've discussed in this show, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights are traveling south to Blacksburg, Virginia, to take on Iceman's Virginia Tech Hokies. And we spoke earlier about the concerns surrounding the Virginia Tech program and some of the things to be excited about when it comes to Rutgers. That being said, I think that the Rutgers Scarlet Knights travel to Blacksburg for a boring afternoon game. Come on, they couldn't even get this one at like 7 p.m. What are they doing down there? Who's scheduling these games? Travel to Blacksburg and win outright against the Virginia Tech Hokies in one of the hardest picks that I've ever had to make. But in the name of continuing perfection, I must take it. Rutgers straight up over the Hokies.
Rutgers over Virginia Tech outright in Blacksburg. So let it be written. So let it be. I hate you. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast. I'm not talking about it anymore. I'm not talking about it anymore. It is what it is. You've stabbed me in the heart, and I'm glad that you're not going to be here next week. Coach is going to be on vacation, going to the sunny state of Florida with the family. Doesn't mean we won't
on earth,
supposedly, but you won't be so happy if Virginia Tech kicks the shit out of Rutgers in Blacksburg this week. Anyhow, so Coach will not be here next week. I'm doing what I can to make sure that we still have a program next week, whether it's a new face over there, whether I bullshit my way through an hour and a half talking about all these things. It won't be an hour and a half if it's just me, but we'll still have a show next week. So take the time to rest up, my man. Take the time to enjoy time with family. The show will always be here. The memories won't always be here. So anything you want to say to everybody before we get out of here and you get on to sunny Florida?
No, man, excited for everybody to stop by. Always appreciative. Just tons to talk about in the world of football, which is, that's why we're doing this, right? It's just exciting. We enjoy it. And I'm thankful that a few of you out there enjoy it as well and are supportive. It's great. It means a lot. And especially our haters that pop up in the comments on YouTube and TikTok and places like that. I love it. Big fan of that as well.
We
So
need you.
we need you. Yes. Yeah, going to Disney World with the family, right? My wife's never been there. Kids have never been there. Me and my dad have both been there, so it'll be and we're, my mom and stepdad are going, my sister, everybody's we're all taking our own separate vacations to the same place at the same time. We will intermingle, but each little family is having their own little independent vacation. So looking forward to it. Kids' first time on an airplane, all sorts of firsts are happening next week. So looking forward to that. It's gonna be fun. Bummed I'm gonna miss the show. I'm sure I will tune in periodically, maybe hop in the comments, start to stir some shit up. And we'll go from there. But I hope you have a good time next week on the show. Hopefully, someone steps up and comes in here to fill these massive shoes, and we'll go from there. But I hope everybody has a good week and enjoy some football this weekend.
Someone will step up, no doubt, but all I want is for you to have a good time. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to us as they always do. You can find us on social media all over the place at INC Sports, Iceman and Coach, whatever it is that you want to search for. And if you want to listen to us in audio, Iceman and Coach, wherever it is that you listen to your podcast, Coach, I hope you guys have a great time. Stay safe out there. To everybody else, I hope this finds you well. I hope this finds you safe. And Coach and I will see you in 2 weeks. But you know what? This is Football Frenzy.